Hi, welcome back to Repairing Lawnmowers for Profit. Just got back with this mower, local village pickup, so not started it up yet. Found this on Facebook Marketplace for £20. So apparently they've just moved house, and since they've moved house they've realised it won't start. Why they're trying to start it in February, I don't know, but my guess is it's probably been tipped up. So we'll have a look round it. Champion, not a self-drive, just a push mower. Not tried to start it, looks like they've been having some difficulty, probably kicks back or something, but let's just have a quick look underneath it here. Just pull the spark plug lead off. There's a carb, you want the carb going up, you see, pointing up. Make sure the blade isn't bent underneath. Nice gap there, everything looks even. Pins there, still going through that blade on the blade adapter. That's great, that's a good start. Let's have a look at this here. Nice, another nice SV150 engine. I don't like these, as you probably know, but my mate over at Mixed Mowers, he says they're good, and he's really good at servicing these up. So I couldn't resist it for £20. The advert on Facebook Marketplace said lawnmower needs fixing, £20. It looked like an advert for advertising someone to come and fix it for them. So I sent them a message saying, is this for sale? And they said, yeah. I thought it was just an advert saying, can someone fix it? So off I went with £20 and picked it up. They say it was very local, so they just dropped it off outside for me during this pandemic and stuff. But yeah, as usual, this is another thing I don't like. I just want to quickly check the oil, and the whole thing comes out like it always does, so you can't check it. So I'm going to trust there's some in there. So if you don't like that, leave me a comment. I'm not bothered really. So let's see if there's a bit of fuel in it. I'm going to try and start this up. Could just be bad fuel. Oh, God, that's tight. Could just be bad fuel. Could be. Oh, I can't even get that open with one hand. Could be spark plug. Could have been tipped so the oil's gone the wrong way. But put this camera on a tripod. I'm going to undo that fuel cap. Let's just have a listen and see if this micro switch works. Oh, that's not working. That's all squishy. That cable's not working. See how that cable's hardly moving there? See that switch here? When I'm pulling this cable up here, micro switch isn't working. That's why it don't work. If the micro switch don't work, if it don't pull across far enough, like that, don't activate the switch, won't get any spark. So it's a cable issue with this. So let's have a play. Put this camera on the tripod, put some fuel in this, and I'm willing to bet that once we get that switch to work, this lawnmower will run. Could be quite a quick fix this, but we'll test it as is with this plug that's in it. If there's any fuel in it, I'll leave it in it and we'll try it. My guess, this hasn't been used for a few years. What's happening nowadays is a lot of people are buying cheap electric ones and not binning these straight away. And my guess is that that's been sat for more than a year, because that's really tight. I bet it's bone dry as well. Oh, there's a bit of fuel in it. Doesn't smell too bad. So just for the sake of the video, I'll leave that in, and let's give it a pull over and see the problems that the owner's been having with it, or the old owner's been having with it. See if I can get this to start. Pretty sure this is just a micro switch problem, to be honest. Right, I'm going to put this plug lead back on. No primer on these. This is don't need to do anything about this. You should just put it on to run. Pull this cable. I hate it when cables don't work because they're expensive, and that's just not doing anything at all. I hate it when these are snapped as well. I don't really want to pull that over like that. I've got a bit of compression, at least it's not trying to kick back. So first thing I'm going to do with this is I'm just going to take this off. I'm going to replace this handle, so I don't want this slicing an hole with my finger. We'll do that first. I want to quickly show you this actually. If you see one like this, if you pull this over, and I shouldn't have really done that, and it's got these parts on it and it kicks back, it pulls the cord back out of your hand, you're going to hurt yourself, aren't you? So the first thing I'm going to do with this, just to save me out of my fingers, is I'm going to cut this off and put another rope on it. But if you're doing this, be very careful, because this will retract all the way into the recoil and you'll lose this starter rope. So if you're doing it, I suggest just clamping off the rope here, but I am going to swap that before I go any further with this mower. Right, I've got to film this. I was looking for a pull cord handle, which I can't believe I can't find. I must have 50 them somewhere, but on my travels I found this. I can't quite remember what mower this is off, but I think that one out there's got that sort of handle on it. Let's have a quick look. I don't think it'll be exactly the same, but oh no, different. Yeah, it's got like a loop. The problem with these is they're all slightly different. There's always a different style on either push through or the hook on, but I'm looking for a handle and I came across that, so that might be of some use. Just wanted to show that, and I can't believe out of all these boxes I've got, somewhere I've got a box with about 40, 50 of them I've just kept, and I just can't find them. Anyway, right, I found one. It's not great, it's an old one, but I found it. But I just want to show you what I'm going to do. Just clamp this off here like this. You can see here, I'm just going to cut this off. You don't need to watch all this. I'm just going to pull this handle through and tie it on, but make sure if you're going to do it this way, do make sure you clamp it like that. Right, I've got another handle on here. Let's just give this another couple of goes. The problem with stuff like this is if you don't get a spark at all, if you don't get any sign of life, that's when you know there's something majorly wrong with it. So at least it's not going to rip my arm off. I can hear the switch clicking, and I don't really understand why the cable doesn't pull back, because it all looks alright. There's no splits or breaks in it. So make sure I get the mixer. Normally if you get this sort of problem, it's because the cable's like been trapped inside here, or there's a break in the cable, but you see how it attaches on there? It's not actually moving, it's just kind of stretching. Doing the same thing here. And these are really quite hard to pull by hand, but I know if I could hold that open by hand, you can hear it click. Listen, this mower will probably start. So my first job with this is to get this cable actually working properly, pulling this open. I'm pretty sure that this lawnmower will start. I think that's just what's happened. I think it's maybe been just left without any maintenance, and the cable just needs a little bit of maintenance. So I might just drop a little bit of oil down here and try and get this cable going a little bit. Right, another thing I'm just going to tell you about as well is because these have two cables on here, what happens a lot of the time is they can rub together, and you'll find it'll stop all the little governors and things, springs working in there. So what people tend to do is, what's happened here is they've cable tied everything together, which is kind of a neat way of doing it. Cable tied it up the handle like this, and they haven't even cut these off. Look, that's a bit lazy. What I'm going to do first of all is I'm going to cut these off all the way down to the bottom and just see what happens. Right, so let's just snip these off here. So, I always like to start with these with everything free, so I know nothing's been trapped. Let's just cut these off here. Get all this off. Make sure everything's loose. And see exactly what we've got. Here we've got a little bit more movement there. Still not enough though, but at least I know there's nothing here that's actually stopping this from doing its job. Right, so what I've decided to do is I'm going to take this cable off. I'm going to show you how to do this as well, because you can have hours of fun with these if you don't know what you're doing. You get some long nose pliers. If you squeeze these parts here, they actually squeeze in, and you haven't got to try and pull it out from here. The idea with these is you push them back through from the opposite side. So what I'm going to do in a second is squeeze this and pull it backwards. You basically just pull the cable out that way, not this way, as you probably might try and do when you're new to this. I'm going to take that off, and I'm going to take it off here as well. And it's exactly the same thing here as well. I'm going to squeeze these clips here. Inside here, they just need squeezing, and I can push it back through. I want to take the whole cable off and make sure that this is all moving freely in here. Now, I've seen a few videos a long time ago where people actually take these off and they'll coil them up and they'll put them in like a tray full of WD-40 and just leave them to soak like overnight and come back. But I don't think this is particularly seized badly, but that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take the cable off, I'll take it in the garage and have a quick look at this. Right, let's grab this clip here. So, I'm just going to grab that there and squeeze it together. It should pull back through the actual hole here. Like that. Actually managed to do that with my fingers. I can unhook this from here Here you see this cable, you can see that. There's nothing seizing on the cable, so something's not right here. It's either not connected in the right place, or this is very, very stiff, which it shouldn't be. So I've come to the conclusion with this that there's nothing wrong with the cable. I was going to take it in the garage and show you, but it moves. And I've just sprayed up all this in here. And as I've sprayed it more and more, you can see, oh, this is freeing up. This is just seized. This part here just needs a really good bit of lubrication. So you can pull it far enough just to release the micro switch. I'll show you something as well now. This is what you're listening for. Probably showed this on loads of videos. This is when I try and film it when I want it to be quiet, loud cars go by. But listen, hear the click? Just. That's what you want. Now I'm having a bet here with myself that this lawnmower will start now. So this is back where it was. I've got this back through here, and I'm going to try it. And it will never start if that micro switch doesn't activate, because it won't allow you to get spark. It can't start without that switch working properly. So let's give this a try. In fact, I was going to stop filming then, but what I'll do is I'll wheel you up here on my tripod. Look, I'll just do it live because it's more fun, isn't it? Right, all this editing stuff later. I just want to get on. I'm quite excited when I get this out of the car. Normally I'm so excited when I've got it out the boot and I've dragged it around the back. I normally don't even tighten these because I'm so excited to get my camera out and try it. So I think this will probably start. Look, there's a choke up here. Let's put it onto choke. There we go. That's a really easy fix. Now you probably agree that this is a lot easier than the one I fixed on the last video, but it just goes to show you that people don't maintain these things. And all it was that caught me out there was that this part didn't move easy enough. I haven't had one of these for a while. If I had, I'd have remembered how hard that was to actually move. But this is a nice mower. There's no rotten deck or anything like this. I just wish it had a self-drive on. I've noticed a lot of the times as well, but these have got these Italian decks. Now I don't know what any of my other mates on YouTube that are doing mowers think of these, but I seem to get these and they seem to last a little bit longer. Don't know why. I don't know if they're just thicker or the paint's better or whatever it is, but this basically starts and runs great, doesn't it? So there's got your little lever on here, look. I was totally wrong about all this, but never mind. Let's just pull this over. Hang on, let's put you down here. You know, that's about as good as I've ever known one of these SV150 engines run ever. Right, so that runs as, probably could hear me on the camera, I'm not sure. I want to clean this off. There's a few things I want to show you on this mower while I've got one of these, because there's a few things on the carb I want to check that I've mentioned in previous videos that I think cause a lot of problems with these mowers. So I'm going to strip some of this down. I'm going to clean it off, take it in the bench, in the garage, and put it on the bench. Sorry, and then I'm going to show you a few things that I always look for on these carbs if you just can't get it running right, because there's so many problems with these lawnmowers where they just rev up and down, and you service the carb and it still revs up and down, and a lot of the time it's a problem in the carb with one of the springs I'm going to show you. And sometimes these cables, if they're clipped together as well, stop things moving about, and this one can catch on all sorts of things. So we'll clean all this rubbish off this, take it in the garage, put it on the bench, and we'll give this a little bit of a strip down and a clean up, make sure there's some oil in it and stuff, and we'll have a bit of a play around with it. But this is a nice little mower, this. Another thing I've got to kind of work out as well is just how to clip that grass box back in there, but I don't think that's too much of a job. Just what's pushing down there. So I can do that. I can take this off, I can show you how to strip it down, I can show you how to look at the carb. I'm not sure if I'm going to service it up or not, because it runs really, really well. I'm going to sharpen the blade, do the oil, do the plug, give this a little service, and then I'm going to sell this one. I'll probably keep this a couple of months until the summer months run out, but stick with me because I am going to show you the whole configuration of the springs, the linkages, in case you've lost anything. I'm going to show you a few things to look for as well when we strip this down. So we'll do a bit of servicing on this, show you around the inside, clean this back up, and we'll sell this one in the summer for profit. Right, so I'll give this a quick wash off with a lawnmower. You get your usual time lapse here, and get some funny comments about this. People really seem to like watching me hose pipe lawnmower, so I'm going to do it anyway. I'm going to get the hose pipe and we'll wash this mower off. And the reason I do this, by the way, is because it just keeps all the dirt out of my garage. So when I bring it in the garage and put it on the bench, I'm not getting grass everywhere. So I'm going to do that. Right, I do want to take the blade off this, but I'm going to do that a little bit later now it's tidy underneath. I might even get this fuel tank off and take it off when there's no fluid in it, but I'm going to start this up again now and show you it runs alright. And what I would normally do after that is just whip it up again and take the blade off, but never run a lawnmower without the blade on, by the way. You're going to cause yourself loads of problems. It's not safe either, so don't do that. Make sure the blade's on, and I'm just going to drop this down and make sure it runs again. Remember to put the spark plug lead back on. And once I'm happy it's running as well as it was before, then I bring it in the garage. Then I've not messed anything up, you see, in between washing it and bringing it in the garage, so I'm not trying to fix something that I think I brought in the garage that I've kind of made a mess of outside. And as I've had no problems there, I'm going to actually take this blade off as well. So, pull this lead off here. Off, keep it all together, lie this mower back down. I've got the blade off, I can bring this in and start servicing this up. Right, so I'm going to spend a little bit of time stripping this down. I'm not going to take it all apart. and show you how to service the car, but I am going to put a card in the top right hand corner of the screen now that links to a whole playlist of kind of repair videos and carb videos I've done on this SV150. But while I've got one running really well, what I want to do is strip this air cover off, and I'm going to look at the springs and linkages, and particularly see how these move about and bounce around on the springs, because this runs as well as I've ever seen with this SV150, and I really want to make this video not just for you watching as well, but also for me for reference in the future if I get any more of these in. So I'm going to start by taking this cover off. We'll take the air filter off, we'll get access to this carb, we'll also take a look at what makes this part where the micro switch actually functions open and close, and see why that was so stiff. Right, and I've got myself some more screwdrivers. These are a gift from my mum and dad, so I asked in the comments section which screwdrivers I should get, and I've got a set of Halford's Advanced ones, and these are great because they've got really strong magnets on the tips, which is great for when you're trying to get in little places like this and pull up the screws, and they're kind of recessed. So I'm not sure if they'll work in here. I don't know if these are Torx or if these are crosshead or whatever they are, but I've got a new set of screwdrivers, you'll be pleased to know. So I'm going to take a look in here and have a dig around in the top of here and see what we need to get out. But it's actually kind of full of grass, so we kind of need to pull this out. Have a look down here and let's just try this. Let's just get this Phillips driver here and see what that feels like in there. I'm not sure what type of screws are in here to get it out. I don't like these that have got the cover on the top like this. I just want to say as well, if you ever see a mower like this, it's got a similar sort of top on it, but it's got the petrol tank actually built into the recoil. I would really advise to either not buy it or to fill it with fuel before you can purchase it, because what happens is that the tank and the recoil are sort of sat together, and often the tanks have split up the back. So you're probably likely to find one and someone will probably say the pull cord snapped or something else, just so you can't try and start it. So this is actually a cover that goes over a normal recoil. I'll show you that in a minute when I've worked out how to get down here, how to get this cover off. So just be aware of that when you're looking for these. I'm going to grab my torch and have a look in there. I think this is just a crosshead driver. I think so, yeah, look at that. So I was going to stop filming then and then see what it was off camera and then come back, but as soon as I've done it we'll carry on. I maybe don't need to take these right out. I was trying to lift that right out, I was hoping the magnets would pull it. It's actually full of water, so we'll get that one loose there, and I think there's one at the back here, so we'll have a go at this one. It's alright, my first go with my screwdrivers this, so I'll have a go at getting that one out of there, and hopefully this will lift off all the way. I can kind of leave the screws where they are. Yeah, I think it's going to do that, isn't it? And the thing is with these as well, I always forget this, but you need to take the petrol cap off. So again, that's still quite tight, but to get this engine cowling off you need to take it off. And again, I'll always mention this in every video, take the spark plug lead off when you're working on these mowers. So take that off, quickly take that off, put that back on. The reason the reason I don't like these as much as the little Briggs ones are, because you've got the fuel line running down here, you've kind of got to clamp the fuel line to get the carb off, and it's not difficult, it's just a little bit more fiddly. And this, just stuff like this don't go on easy, and everything seems a bit clunky. And one pet hate I've really got is getting this oil dipstick out, and every single one I've seen does the same thing, and I'll show you exactly what that is. It's this part here. Just get a cloth on this. This part here always sticks, and the dipstick never ever comes out of this part here. So let me just clean this off a bit. This part here is supposed to unscrew, but when it's in the mower, this part never ever comes out of it. It always sticks to this and unscrews the whole thing, which is absolutely useless, and I absolutely hate that. In fact, I can feel like an SV150 rant coming on as I go through this already, but I'll try and I'll try and not go there. But it's just little things like that when you're trying to work on them, they're just a little bit more faffy and time consuming really. So we'll give that a little bit of a clean off there, and we can change the oil on this. I'll probably do that when I get the blade back on and get it back up and running. I'll change the oil, but at least now I can put this back in and check it before we start this mower up again. But I didn't really want to have to take the engine cover off just to check the oil really, and I bet even if I put that in now and then put it back on the mower and try and unscrew it again, I bet the whole thing still tries to come out. So put that up there, remove that, and let's take a look in here. Just to make this a bit easier so you can see what I'm doing, I'll just take off this recoil cover. These are pretty straightforward. I kind of prefer this design on the top where you can get through these on the top. I must admit is that coming off there? I'm not sure what's happening with that, to be honest. That's a bit strange. We'll carry on. Got that one off. I get a lot of these parts that get stuck in the end of this drill as well. It's the socket really that holds them in, but we'll get that one out. So I'm not really too sure what's going on with that. Okay, it's just it's caught. There's like a wire underneath here, like a kill switch wire. I need to pull it out of the way. Now it should come off like that. It was just this little wire here. The little wire there, you can just about see that on camera, and that was just hooked over the actual part that goes through into here. So that's fine, we've got that off. I don't know why I've not taken the air filter off, but we'll take that off. It's easy enough to do. And then I'm going to take the camera off the tripod. I'm going to show you around in here, show you these linkages and show you these springs as well. Right, so in a second I'm going to put this camera on the tripod and get some really good shots of this. But you can see inside here it's kind of dirty. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to film a few videos that show when you're actually using this in normal operation. If you've got one of these SV150 engines, I'm going to show what happens with these linkages and springs in kind of every part. So I'm going to kind of film when it's on choke and see where everything's at. I'm going to film it on normal operation. I'm going to film it when you move it down to slow. I'm going to check a few of these linkages, show you where they all go, a few of the springs as well, and just show you how everything moves about. And one part I'm particularly interested in is this part here. Now underneath this part here, we got something to point with, so I feel like a school teacher, but underneath here there's a spring, and I've seen loads of these SV150s that haven't run correctly until I've been under here and I've made the spring off again. So I want to see where there's a really thin, really fine spring. I want to see if this moves around under the spring tension and how they've connected the spring, because normally when I take all this apart I'm kind of in a mess with it and I'm guessing kind of where it goes back together by the time I've done the carb. So I'm going to clean this off with the airline. I'm going to blow all this off so I can see a bit better, and we'll have a little play around here and film a few things. So you can see here, plastic flywheel, and the only reason I can think that this switch here was difficult to operate was this spring must have just got rusty underneath. That's all there is. It's just under one massive spring tension. And for anybody who's not seen this before, when you operate this dead man's handle here, it moves out of the way and it needs to move far enough to click like this. If it doesn't come out far enough, if it doesn't kind of deactivate by clicking like this, what happens is these wires don't send a spark to the ignition coil, obviously don't send it to the spark plug, you don't get a spark, your lawnmower don't run. So if it doesn't click and it doesn't move like that, that's the first thing you need to check on an SV150. This little point here is correct. These wires that look like they've been made off by someone else who's had a go, that's actually, I've seen that loads of times, so it must be correct. And this part here needs to go back on, and that's what was actually catching on this recoil cover when I took it off. So let me blow all this off and we'll have a play around in here and have a look and see what everything looks like. Right, so I've tried not to, but I'm going to cover all the things that really bug me about this. So I'm going to film the linkages in a minute, but I want to explain a few things for people that have done everything they can to get one of these SV150 engines running again. Serviced the carb, put the linkages back, checked everything. I'm going to go through a few other things that are a little bit of a bugbear to me, because what happens with these is, if you remember, somebody cable tied this all the way up the handle and all that. We've been through all that. If you remember, they'd cable tied this here, and the biggest problem for me is that if you don't cable tie these here, this cable here, which runs underneath here, you can see runs under there to your throttle, this cable touches this governor arm. Now this governor arm is super important to how your engine and your lawnmower work and run, whether it idles properly and whether it holds an even sort of tempo when it's running, it's not revving up and down stuff. But what happens a lot of the time is people have cable tied this and they've got it really nice and neat and they're really happy with it. It looks really good on the handle, and it pushes against the governor and it stops the governor moving about. Now the governor only moves a little bit on these lawnmowers, as you can see, and it's connected to this linkage under here. This linkage goes up to here, and you see if you move this part here manually, the governor moves. So all this, it's just, even now it's annoying me. See, it can get anywhere, it can still get in the way. This has to be out of the way, right? Somehow you have to manually get this out of the way, and it can be really annoying. And the only way I've found to do it is to cable tie it to the other one around here, so it comes round in a loop like that. If it doesn't miss it, if it catches it at all, you'll have running problems. Now, the other issue I've got is it connects to this linkage up here, as I've shown you. This linkage comes out on the top here, which hooks to this, and then you've got this one spring. Now, this here, when you open and close this part, this, I don't know, this, let's call it a triangular part, you see how it bounces back like that, a bit like Alan Partridge. He bounced back, didn't he? Remember that? Anyway, you see how it bounces around? It's a bit like the Briggs setup, you see, where it kind of bounces around. It all makes sense, and it sits somewhere in the middle, I guess. When it's running, it holds the revs and stuff. So the problem I've got with this is that I think if you take that spring off there, I have seen these before where this part underneath here, as I've said before, I'll get my new screwdriver to show you, has a little spring in, because I think there's some spring tension under here, because without this spring attached here, when you move this here, it still kind of wants to spring back. There's a little bit of spring in this, not much, but there's a tiny little bit, and I think when the springs break under here, this doesn't operate properly, it doesn't hold in the place it should do, and you can have running issues, and these things still rev up and down. So it's just something to look out for. If you think you've done everything else right, make sure the governor's free under there. And there isn't a lot of spring tension in this. In fact, before, when I just tested this, it seemed to be a little bit more. So let's just move that governor away a little bit. Let's move that to the furthest point. Yeah, there doesn't seem to be a lot there, but I know for sure there's a spring on some of these, so if you want to check that, it might be advisable to do it if you've tried every single thing else. But I'm going to film in here. I was going to put it on the tripod, but I can actually get in nearer from here and show you exactly what everything does when we move this actual throttle lever on here. So I'm going to do that now. Right, so I'm going to film in here and I'm going to show you exactly what happens when we alter this. So I'm going to put this onto choke, and you can see when this is on choke here, this spring here is at its maximum tension really, and if you move all this around, you need to check this and make sure it all moves freely. Make sure this spring moves, make sure this part here moves, make sure this governor all moves, everything moves and springs back. So when it's on choke, this spring tension, it's kind of stretched to its maximum, and what we're going to do is we're going to take it right down to the bottom. I'm going to do this slowly while I show you the springs, in case you've got yourself in a mess. So I'm going to take this now and I'm going to move this onto the slowest setting. You can see what happens with the spring. So I've got that on the slowest setting. There's a lot more slack in this spring, as you can see here. So this is exactly what should happen when we actually using this throttle. So you're opening and closing it, you're basically getting this effect. You can see how everything moves about, how the spring stretches when it's on choke here, and how it shrinks again when you put it onto the slowest speed setting. This should move about, this setting here. You can see everything open and close, and this little black plastic part here, whatever that's called, I'm going to show you how that moves as well. So that's on the slowest setting. When you go back to choke, it should go up to there. I just want to say, for anyone who's noticed, when I took this recoil off, by the way, this part here shouldn't necessarily have come off. This has come off at this side. It doesn't need to come off. The only reason it's come off is because it's kind of rusted to this part here, so I need to get that off. And this part that sits under here can actually stay there and stay through this hole here. So that doesn't need to come off. The only reason it's come off is because it's kind of rusted itself to it through there. So I'll sort that for anybody who's wondering about that. And if I think I remember rightly as well, this screw here, this sets the actual idle speed. So when this opens here like this, let's just see when it's running, this actually moves around, as you can see here, and it'll push against the screw, so you can actually move this to set the actual idle speed. I think it's the idle speed, I don't think it's the full speed setting, but again, we can have a play about with that when we get this mower back up and running. And I'm pretty sure that I'm showing you this right, and everything's moving as it should, because we've had this lawnmower running, and as I said on camera before, I don't think I've ever had one run quite as well as this, which is why I'm sort of stood here hesitant to service the carb, because it doesn't need servicing. There's nothing wrong with this carb, so I am going to change the plug though. And what I tend to do with these is, if I can find the cable ties, I do what they've kind of done before, but before I actually fasten anything to the handle, I actually get this in a position and cable tie this quite close here, so I know that I can see what's going on. I usually cable tie. I just hate the fact that you've got to cable tie something to stop it banging against the governor, so I usually do that at first, make sure everything kind of moves about and there's no chance of this actually touching the governor, so that's what I normally do. And then I know that that's out of the way, I know it's not going to touch anything. And really, when you're using everything else, it's all attached to the handle and cable tied at the handle, as long as this part doesn't move and everything operates as it should, then you shouldn't have a problem. And I do see loads, I'll say this again, I do see loads of these with the cable, even sometimes someone's taking it off and put it around the back, so just be very aware that that's not touching the governor. Right, so there's a couple of other things I've just thought about. You might be asking, well, how do I know if I've got an SV150 engine? Well, what they do on these, because it's cheap, is they put a sticker on the side of the engine block, and it'll either say RV or SV150, so you'll either have an RV150 or an SV150. I think, and this might be wrong, I think the RV150 is pretty much a similar engine, but they fit it on the mowers with the self-drive. That might be wrong, but I know they're very similar. So an RV150 or an SV150, most of these tips and tricks will help you out. The next thing I want to show you is the actual throttle. You can adjust the throttle and the cable. If you look under here, if you look there, you'll see there's a screw. So if you undo the screw here, you can actually move the position of the cable, and it hooks into this little part here, which in turn goes around here, up here, and into the top of all this mechanism here. So if you wanted to try and get this running a bit faster or slower, or your cable stretched, which it shouldn't really do on your throttle cable too much, that's how you alter it. But you can change it if it's running too fast or possibly too slow and you're kind of desperate. Normally I tend to leave those alone, so I think from factory they haven't really been touched, and I don't think they stretch very much. But that's another thing to look out for as well. Something I want to show you that's really quite awkward to film, but super critical for someone who has a lawnmower that won't start, is in here. You can see in here there's like what I call a butterfly valve, a silver valve. Now that should be flat or closed, or 90% closed when you've got the mower on choke. You can see there, you can see like a silver part here. Well, that's because this mower's on choke, but as I take it off choke, you'll see here how it opens up. Obviously you don't want it on choke when the mower's running, so if you've got a lawnmower, an SV or RV150 engine that doesn't start, what you need to do is you need to make sure the choke is closing properly. And this is why I've just pointed out the cable underneath, because this cable, with some adjustment, you can perhaps pull this back a bit and get the adjustment you need to make sure that this choke closes. You can get the adjustment for the choke and set the choke by moving the cable, and what you need to do is you basically need to put this onto choke here, which is this little symbol here. For anybody who doesn't know, that's anybody who's never had an old Austin Metro, not to use a choke like I did, or older perhaps. This is a choke for all you youngsters. And to set the choke, you need to put that onto choke. This lines up with it. This sounds really obvious, but this handle needs to line up with the icon that says choke. And at that point, this little silver valve here, you can just see through there, this needs to be closed. If it's not, then undo the screw here, move the cable until this is closed, and then tighten the cable back up under here, and you should be able to go to this, put it onto choke. This should be closed, which means it's choking itself, which means it should start up. So that's how you do it if you've got a lawnmower that won't run. And again, if you've got a lawnmower that is really hard to start, if it's hot, then the reverse is kind of in effect, because what can happen then is you can get one where the choke is closing. Imagine trying to run this and you're running it on kind of full speed and then it's hot, and then you kind of put it back onto choke, it's unlikely to start because it doesn't want choking because the engine's warm. So it kind of works in reverse. In most cases you'll probably get a lawnmower that won't start because the choke doesn't close, so you need to do what I've said, put that up there, take a look in here to make sure you can see what you're doing. This is why I don't like this flap, another SV150 thing I don't like. You can't really see in there to see what you're doing, annoying, but you can set it under there. And if you've got a lawnmower that only starts when it's cold, you need to make sure that when you've got this on full here, that this choke here isn't closed, it needs to be open. So I hope that makes some sense. And I know I'm going on, but when it's on choke, this needs to be closed. When it's running full, this valve in here needs to be open. This actual butterfly valve needs to be open. That's how it needs to go. And you can set all these things up using this little cable. And as you can see with this one, when I put it on choke and look in here, you can see it's closed. You can see a silver part. When I take it off here to normal running use, you look in there and you can see that that's open. So real difficult to film. See if I look in there, bend that down a little. You see how that's open there in normal running use? Don't like bending that really. And then when you go to start the motor when it's cold, you can see how it's laid flat across. Shouldn't go completely flat across, as far as I remember. Normally they just open a little bit. Could do with some adjustment now, but it started up nicely. And that's how you do it. That's a really good tip for all you SV150 lovers. So, in the interest of fairness, I'm going to point out some things I do like. Oh well, one thing I do like about this mower, it has this little clip on here, and it actually holds this ignition coil in here. The Briggs ones don't have that. So, what happens is when you drop this recoil cover back on here, there's a little notch in this, and it actually makes sure that this cable here, this ignition coil here, this cable off here, sits in that little gap. The Briggs ones don't have that. So that's one tick in the right box for this SV150. And just going back to what I said earlier, if you get a mower that's got a kind of a cover on like that, but it actually has the recoil built in the back of it itself and the petrol tank, you can do a conversion. I've actually done a video on that. If I can find it, I'll link to that in the top right hand corner now as well. There's a little bit fiddly to do. You've got to change over these parts here, and basically you end up with this setup with a separate recoil and a separate tank, so if anything happens you can change one of the parts. The problem with the other way is if the recoil breaks or the petrol tank splits, both parts are broken, which is a really awful design. And the reason I'm mentioning it is if you go to do that, you get these parts out of here. If you over tighten these parts here, these snap really easily. And sometimes I've had to put a couple of washers on the top of here as well on the conversion, just to make sure that this actual recoil catches nicely as well. So while you're in here, you might as well clean all this out. But if you've got one with a combined fuel tank and recoil setup, you can convert it to this setup with a actual separate tank and recoil. So I realise there'll be a few viewers watching this that think, why don't you strip the carb down and show us how to do it? And as I've said, there's a playlist I've put in the description of the video, and there's probably around, I don't know, 40-50 videos showing how to do those sort of things and where the springs go again and how to service the carb. But one thing I will say is if you get a mower in like this and it's running as well as this on an SV150 engine, I would be very hesitant to take it off and service the car because it doesn't need doing. It runs really well. It even runs kind of nearly on idle, or as well as it ever will. So in this case, if I was getting this in to sell, which I am, or servicing it for a friend, I would not service the carb, and I would actually say that I've not serviced it because it's running really well, and I would say that I've stripped it down and cleaned all the parts off, checked all the linkages, checked the springs, lubricated parts, checked the micro switch, checked all the throttle, the cable, the actual choke. And the next thing I always do is I'm going to actually take out this plug here. If you look on here how white this is, you can tell this is kind of comes standard with a mower. Now this might take some getting out. What I tend to do now is I've got a massive rubber mallet. Remember Mallet's mallet? I loved that as a kid. We find my rubber mallet. Do you remember those days in the 80s when kids used to get smacked on the head with a big mallet at breakfast TV? Honestly, it was great, wasn't it? That would never happen now, would it? But what I do is I put my spark plug tool in here now, and I just bump this around a little bit. That's it. And just with the weight of that mallet there, my Timmy mallet, as it shall now be known, will give it a whack a day, and we'll get this spark plug out. So I've got some more spark plugs. I'll show you exactly the ones I use as well. So if I remember, I'll put these in the description as well below this video. I use these in all Briggs engines and all these SV and RV150s. These are NGK spark plugs. These are B2LM, you can see here. I use these on all my mowers. I always say this on the videos, but I do use all these on all my mowers. That I can fit these in. I think the Honda ones are a little bit different, but the Briggs ones, the SV150 ones, these are fine. They work absolutely perfectly well. So put that in. What I tend to do is just put it in by hand, and I'll just tighten this up a tiny little bit until I feel like it can possibly vibrate its way out. We've got a nice clean plug in there, and again, if you saw the last video, this was broken inside here. There's a little catch in here, and you need to make sure that this actually clicks like that and pushes on. It's quite hard to get off again. That's correct. So you need to make sure that clicks on there. Again, if you don't get this right, you won't get spark. And for now I'm going to take that off there just while I'm working on this mower. So we've got that sorted. To show you this, I mentioned these parts earlier that can snap. If you over tighten these, they can snap easily. You can lose them into the inside of here, make a right mess. I've done that before. So because I've got this problem with this here, I've got this actual kind of nut sticking to this. What I'm going to do is be very careful with this, and by hand, just with two spanners, I'm going to put one on one side and hold it, take it off on the other. I'm not going to do this with any sort of impact tool. I'm just going to carefully undo that. I'm going to make sure that I put this part back on the mower first, free this part up as well in case I need to get this off again, and put it back properly. But just be very careful with these parts under here because they really are quite thin. And another thing with those parts is if you are going to scrap a mower, I normally take all of the bits off, like the ignition coil, the carbs and everything like that, handles, and you know, I've been through all that before, but I often, if I can get these off, I just take those off as well, and I drop them in my box of spares. Got this part here, has rescued this part here, and if you, in case you're wondering, this this side here goes to the bottom, and this side here where you can actually get the actual spanner on if you need, sits at the top. So I'm going to put that in there and drop that in. You've got to be careful with this wire that it doesn't go on the side here where the flywheel is. So I'm going to put that in there, tighten that in like that. When you've got these parts in here, I know I've started using an impact driver quite a lot, an impact wrench and stuff quite a lot, but when you're doing these sort of things, even if you can do them finger tight and just feel where they go. But I wanted to show you this cable goes around this side, and you don't want to over tighten these, you really don't. As I keep mentioning, that's enough. I don't really want to go any more than that, because if it snaps at the bottom, it's a mess. You've got to drill it out, you've got to find another one of these, and the problem with that is it should never have come out with this part here. So I need to make sure I lubricate these a little bit before I put them back in, so this doesn't stick again when it actually goes through the recoil and onto top of there as well. So we'll do that as well. Okay, not to want to moan too much on this video, but another reason I don't like these is this really poor thin design of these recoils. All that's stopping this from snapping here, you've got metal here against plastic, and there's not much plastic on these. I mean, you can see how thin they are there, and I've seen so many of these where the plastic snapped. Basically, probably because they have so many starting issues, people overuse the starter recoil just to try and get it started, pull it really, really hard. You've got this plastic part here, as I'm trying to show you with my finger here, and this metal part basically catches it and pulls the whole thing round. And I don't like to see metal against plastic, and this is just cheap and thin, and these are kind of troublesome for getting started sometimes. With everything I've showed you with the choke, setting up the throttle and the design of it and the micro switch and things like that, that these parts often break when people are having trouble starting them, because they'll pull them forever, convinced that if they pull these lawnmowers over like for 3 hours it might eventually start. So these take a lot of hammer on this model, and for that reason I don't like this recoil cover on the SV150s either. So I've had a good look round, I'm convinced everything's moving as it should, all the linkages and springs. I've filmed all those as well as I can, so I'm going to put the recoil cover back on here. I'll drop this on top of here like this, push it through. I'm going to get some in here and lubricate these, and we'll put these back on the top as well. And again, as I've said before, when you're putting these parts back on top of here, you'd be alright with an impact tool, but if it sticks to those rods that are below and you snap them, then you're in dead trouble, aren't you? So again, just get a spanner. At least with a spanner you can feel how tight these need to be, and you can tell they don't really need to go around very much to be tight, so that's fine. Make sure that's on there, right? And then we've got this cover to go back on here. Again, take the petrol cap off just to put the cover back on. Personally, I think it looks better like that, but it's come with this cover, so let's put it back on. Quickly put that cap back on so it doesn't smell of petrol. We'll put all this back together. What I'm going to do as well is I'm going to start it and we're going to drain all the oil out of this, and we'll put some more oil in as well. Something else to mention as well, always make sure you use the original screws when you put these back in. There's no actual governor flap on these lawnmowers because it's got the governor under here. You don't get that usual white plastic governor flap that runs around there. So one thing to do is make sure you use the right length screws even on these type of mowers, because there's all sorts of parts, if you just get a longer screw out of the garage and push it through, that you could hit the actual wire for the ignition coil or anything like that. So if you've got the screws that came out of it and they look original, they all match and things like that, use the right length screws to go back in. Make sure that they don't go too far down into this engine. If you have gone to the trouble of servicing the car, make sure this filter box is all nice and clean, and don't put this back in like this. What I tend to do with this is, if I dump out any old fuel, I'll wash it in old fuel, then just blow it off with the compressor with the airline. Make sure it's nice and clean and put that back. It's night time now, so I'm not going to go outside and do that with the airline at the minute, but I'm going to give that a clean off, blow it all out, and I'm going to put that back in. And another thing to look at as well is make sure that you clean out the back side of this air filter box as well before you put it back on. Another thing you should do with this filter as well is get a little bit of oil, and just, not a lot, but just enough just to cover it a little bit, and that just stops all the dust kind of getting through these things. So don't put much on it, and once you've got it all clean, put that back in there like that. I had some air left in my actual airline as well, so I've just given that a bit of a clean off. So I'm going to put that on there, and this has actually got a catch missing on here. There's actually a catch broken off this part here, but it still hooks on alright over there, so it goes round, pushes on to the right hand side first. This little part here sticks out here through the front, and then you should push it on and it should clip on. It's all pretty easy to do. And fasten that back up, and then we can get this running again, and put some fresh fuel, some fresh oil in this as well. The reason I'm waiting for it to run is because when the engine's been running, you can get more of the oil out easy. Just comes out easier with the extractor. And I don't want to tip, especially with one of these SV150s, I don't want to tip this right over to get the oil out. It's one of the last things you want to be doing with something like this, really. So I'm going to get the blade sharpened. I'll do that off camera as I usually do, just on a bench grinder I've got, which you can see up here. Look at that, look. That's all I do, just run it along there, and then we'll take this back outside and test it all again. And hopefully there's a little bit of profit in this one for me coming up in the summer. Okay, so I've got this back together. I'm going to try and start this up and leave it running a while. I'm going to swap the oil in this. We'll get this out with the extractor. I'm also going to do a few other little bits, like tighten these handles as well. It's really quite frustrating when they're not tight. This part needs tightening here, and there's actually a whole bolt missing across the other side, so we'll tighten it up. But the blade's sharp and back on, so I'm going to start it, and hopefully it'll start and run as well as it did before. And then we'll change the oil in this little mower. Right, so I've had that running a while, so it should be enough to warm up this oil. It should be a bit easy to get out. Got this pot, this is like one of these blender things. But I'm going to put that under there. And I'm going to drain the oil out. I've actually got this oil part back in here tight. Managed to lubricate this so I can actually get the oil out. So I'm going to pump this out with the extractor. I haven't used this for a while actually, so to be honest it's seen better days now, this extractor. I've had a few cheaper ones of these off eBay, and to be fair they lasted alright. Didn't last forever, but they were alright. I'm not even sure what we'll get out of this, so hopefully this will start to do its thing. There we go, that's all the oil finally gone out of this lawnmower. So we'll get some oil for this. What you need to use for this really is SAE 30 oil. That's the recommended oil. I've got a big tub of it again, get from an auto jumble. So you need around 500 millilitres of this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it into about 450 and just top it up from there and see how we get on. So what I normally do is just tip it in a measuring jug, get a funnel, and then just tip it in this mower. We've got some nice clean oil going on in there then. Right, so I'm going to tip this oil in here. Got myself a funnel. When you do this, you just want to do it really slowly and just give it a chance to go down before it all backs up. Kind of flows over the top. So don't forget, you can always not put enough of this in and top it up. It's a lot easier than taking it out again. So just really slowly put this in here. I'll leave it a few minutes to settle and I'll just check the level as well. And I'll show you where it needs to be on one of these SV150 engines on the actual dipstick as well. You can see on this engine oil dipstick here there's a low line and a higher line here. It needs to be in between these two. I normally just kind of go for around 3/4. You never want to overfill these, it's really bad for them. So just below maximum is always a good guide. So what you do with this is obviously you just clean this off, put it back in and thread it all the way in, and then you get your measurement when you pull this back out, and you can see between these lines you should have some nice clean oil that stops kind of around this part. So obviously your dipstick's going back in that way, and you want it to be around here on the stick. So that's all I'm going to do. I'm going to retest it and probably just top this up a little bit. Right, so giving that a minute or so just to go down. This is why it's really important, if you take this actual dipstick out of this tube here, you want to get this really tight while you've got all this engine covering off. Then you can actually check the oil properly by threading this in and out. So that's all the way in. I'm going to take that out again. I'm just going to check the level. It's normally a little bit under, which is fine. So yeah, that needs a little drop more in, but really I'm quite happy with that. Give that another quick go. I think it just wants another little bit of oil in it, but we're not too far off really. At least I can get this stick in and out and check this. So we're nearly there with this mower. I just want to tighten these handles up, and I'll put it all together with the grass box on. I'll show you what it looks like when it's finished. Yeah, that looks nice. Give these handles a quick tighten up. Obviously these you can just do by hand, but these ones here, you've got two 13mm spanners. You normally get a ring spanner on the back. Give that a good tighten up. We're going to do the same on the other side. I'm going to hunt through my box of parts and find a bolt to go through the other side. I'm pretty sure I've got some spares of those. As if by magic, I've actually found one for this side as well, which was a total stroke of luck. It was actually in the first kind of box I looked in, so let's get that spanner on there like that. Let's just get this on, give this a tighten up. So. There we go, we've got a nice tight handle so you can manoeuvre this lawnmower as you should have been able to when it was new. It moves, lifts up and down a lot better, feels a lot better as well. So as per usual, it's just about to start raining. It's just actually started raining a bit, and I'll start this up in a second just as the video ends so you can see it running again. But cosmetically a few scuffs and scrapes on it, but really good solid decks, these Italian ones. Actually feels heavy. I don't know if I mentioned that on the video. These actually feel heavier when I'm lifting them on and off the bench. I'm not sure if it's the weight of these SV150 engines or if it's the weight of the deck. I suspect it's the engine because it's a bit bigger. Obviously you can see that's quite a bit bigger than the 35 Classic, so a little bit heavier, but the deck has held up quite well. I think it's, what is it, 2009, yep, 2009 what's it say, GGP Italy. So come up quite tidy. I hope these tips on these SV150 engines will help you as well. A little bit of paper on there. Basically, make sure your cables are tidy, make sure your governor here is free, make sure the choke works correctly, make sure the make sure the micro switch works correctly as well, and your Microsoft, of course, because you know that's not fun when that spins around, is it? But yeah, little champion. We'll start this up again. I hope you'll agree it looks a little bit nicer than when it came in, although it wasn't actually in bad condition. Start this up again, and it'll just be nice to see one of these SV150 engines running nicely. Thanks for watching. There'll be a playlist coming on screen shortly of all the other videos I've done on these SV and RV150 engines. So if there's anything else you need to know about these engines or getting going again, please leave me a comment in the comment section. I really appreciate that. And of course, as all YouTubers say, please subscribe to the channel. So let's start this up as this card comes up, and feel free to go on and watch a few more videos of this. I'll just leave you with this engine actually running nicely. Thanks a lot for watching. See you again next time.